join this festival, and I'm very happy to see you all here today. What an amazing turnout. And I'm even more happy to sit here with the guest of honor, Jeff Lemire. And those of you who have followed Jeff over the years know that he's done an amazing amount of work, so we'll see how much of that we can cover in this like 45-minute span that we have allotted to us. But since the theme for this festival is science fiction and realism, I thought we could maybe start in the future and talk about some of your upcoming projects, if that's okay, what you're working on right now.
Yeah, well, I'm working on a lot right now. I'm pretty busy. Let me think. So at Marvel, I'm working on Old Man Logan, the X-Men, Moon Knight, and of course I'm writing Descender for Image Comics, and drawing a graphic novel that Scott Snyder wrote called AD After Death, which is science fiction as well. That will be out in November. And then I'm writing and drawing a new ongoing series as well that hasn't been announced yet, so I won't say any more.
Yeah, we'll keep mum about that. But you also have a graphic novel out from Simon & Schuster, right?
Yeah,
Roughneck.
I forget because I actually finished it almost a year and a half ago. But
Okay.
yeah, a new graphic novel called Roughneck will be out from Simon & Schuster in the spring of 2017. It keeps getting pushed for various scheduling reasons, not my own, them. But yeah, it's been done for a while, so I've kind of, it's already in my rear view mirror.
Oh, okay, yeah, I understand. But so how come it was? It's taken so long for it to get published? Because you went to Simon & Schuster for a reason that they would treat it more like a novel than a graphic novel.
Yeah, I mean, I started off doing, my first sort of big book was Essex County with Top Shelf, and that kind of reached a more literary audience in Canada and in the US. And then since then I've kind of gone on to do more, I guess you would call it mainstream work, Marvel, DC, and even my personal work is sort of skewed more towards science fiction with Sweet Tooth, Trillium. So I wanted to go back and do something that was a little more grounded, a little closer to my early work, and I thought approaching a real book publisher like Simon & Schuster, they would treat it like a novel rather than just a comic, and I thought that would be an interesting experiment. And it's been great, but yeah, there's no problems. It's just I think they're going to launch their own graphic novel imprint, so they could decide to hold the book and use it as part of that launch, which will be good for me and for them. So that's why it's taken a bit longer to come out.
Okay, so how much can you tease about what's in Roughneck?
Roughneck, yeah, I can talk about it freely. It's Roughneck is one aspect of sort of the Canadian landscape that I felt like I wasn't very educated in, and I wanted to learn more about was our Aboriginal people, First Nations. I felt like growing up where I grew up, I wasn't really exposed to that culture very much. And it's a big part of the Canadian identity that is often overlooked in pop culture and in media. So I kind of used Roughneck as an excuse to spend some time in the far north in Canada and among some Native communities and First Nations communities, getting to meet people, make friends there. And I wanted to tell a story that had some of that flavor to it. So Roughneck, it centers around a brother and sister, an adult brother and sister. We're both fairly troubled from the north. He's an ex-hockey star, which seems to be a reoccurring thing.
Yes,
in my work, and I swear it's the last time I'm going to do it. But,
are you sure?
Probably. I was so sick of drawing hockey after this one, I swore never. We'll see.
Yeah, the puck is a beautiful thing.
Yes, the puck is good. Well, Sweden, you guys appreciate it. There's no other country that can appreciate hockey like that.
But we're sister nations. I always say Canada and Sweden, and when a bigger Canadian delegation that you were slated to be a part of, but scheduling reasons 2 years back. I mean, they felt right at home.
Yeah,
guys, and that's what they said. That it's the feel is very close to Canada.
I'm getting off topic, but I spent the morning walking around, and I felt comfortable. Yet it was all new. It was really cool. Yeah, I really love Sweden. So. Anyways,
Yeah, and back to
Roughneck. He's an
yes.
ex-hockey guy from the north, half Aboriginal guy. His career ended in disaster, a very violent on-ice incident. He was suspended for life. He's a very violent guy. So he's it's 10 years later, and he's sort of just stuck in this spiral of self-hatred and alcoholism and violence that he can't get out of until his younger sister, who he hasn't seen since they were both teenagers, returns, and she's even more messed up than he is, and it kind of forces him to become the big brother finally. And it's sort of about their relationship and about them kind of reconnecting with their past and finding a way to move forward and to heal together. So yeah, that's what it's about.
Okay, this sounds beautiful.
It's amazing. Trust me.
Yeah. I'll take your word for it. But staying in the future for a bit longer, the Scott Snyder project, AD After Death, it's coming up from Image, and if you want a little teaser, I can recommend you pick up Image Plus, which is the first issue of their magazine where Image will showcase a lot of new stuff with great interviews and some tidbits.
Yeah, there's a 16-page preview of AD in that first issue. So yeah,
Yes.
it's full color and painting the whole thing, which is pretty time-consuming, but I think will be worth it. And it's a pretty unique book. You know, it's sci-fi and it's comics, but large sections of it are also prose that Scott is writing, and I'm kind of doing spot illustrations, and it kind of flows between prose and comics and back again, and then eventually they kind of merge at the end. And so it's pretty unique. It'll be a hardcover graphic novel.
Yeah. And what we have, we have a lot of artists in the audience. So, when you paint, what type of stuff do you use?
It's all watercolor. So I use traditional pen and ink, and then I watercolor over that. So that's sort of the process I've kind of been working on the last couple of years. A little bit with Roughneck, and then full on with AD, just full color painted. I don't think I could ever go back to using a computer colorist again, like I had in Sweet Tooth. I mean, I love Jose Villarubia, who colored Sweet Tooth. He's great, very talented,
very much interesting.
When you can do it all yourself and it all keeps the same aesthetic and works together, I think it's the strongest. Visually, it's my strongest work for sure. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah. And that is not yet finished. So you told me about can we out Scott as a slow rider,
slow and very fast. It's not a good mix, but so there's a lot of waiting for script. But we have about 90 pages. I have about 90 pages drawn. So we're getting close. I think maybe 2 more months I'll be done with that book, and then I'll jump right back into my new series.
Yeah, okay, this is your second collaboration, right?
Scott?
Yeah. You did the Rot World Animal Man Swamp Thing a couple years back.
It's very different though, working as writers within the DC editorial system, and then as opposed to us doing a book that we
of course.
Yeah,
so
it's completely different.
I was gonna ask you about that process, how that looks when you, because then you deliver script to the editorial system. As you say.
Plus we're working with other artists, so by the time a process like that was done, there's dozens of people involved, and your vision gets kind of filtered through all those people. And sometimes it can be great, you get great results, but it's not as pure as just me and Scott doing something together.
Of course. You left. You had a good run on DC there for a couple of years. Animal Man was out of the gate for New 52. This is going to be kind of esoteric. Maybe if you don't follow superhero comics, we'll keep it as brief as possible.
Keep it short.
Yeah, and then you did Green Arrow for a while, and you did also Earth One.
Those two are the only ones worth talking.
But how was it being a part of that? Larger continuity.
It's difficult.
Editorial system, and you have this. You're not answering only to your own vision, as you say. You're part of a. You're like a small cog in a very big machine that moves forward no matter what you do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you can get great results, and it can be really rewarding when it works. Like Animal Man and Green Arrow, I thought were both very successful projects where the right character, the right editor, the right artist and writer together, and we had like a vision, and they kind of, for whatever reason, let us do it, you know. But then there's half a dozen other projects I did that were varying degrees of success. I think, you know, maybe sometimes you just get with an artist who, the artist might be a great artist, but their storytelling style may not mesh with the way I tell a story, so it doesn't quite work, or you get with an editor who's too heavy-handed, or, you know, there's various things behind the scenes. So it's always, there's so much out of your control, I guess, is what it comes down to, as opposed to when I do my own stuff at Image or whatever. It's complete control, and for good or bad, whatever ends up on the page is from me only, or me and Scott in this case. But yeah, it can be really rewarding collaborating like that at Marvel and DC, but it can also be frustrating. It just depends on the project.
Yeah, because I mean, at Image, for instance, you can choose if you want to have an editor or not, as I understand it.
Yeah, and I never do have it.
You know, yeah,
I'm pretty hard. I'm very good at self-editing. I've always been.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just really hard on myself. So and also at Image, you know, I'm working with Scott, so we kind of keep each other accountable. If something he does isn't quite there or whatever, I can tell him that, and vice versa. And the same with Descender and Dustin Nguyen, who I'm working with. Great collaborators, so we kind of keep each other honest. We act as our own editors for each other almost. We don't really need that third person on those books.
And if we take the time machine backwards, your first vocation, so to speak, was film. You sort of
technically not really. Yeah,
no?
I mean, I went to film school in Toronto. I grew up in a really small rural community in Canada, as seen in my graphic novel Essex County. That was pretty much where I grew up. And I moved to Toronto when I was 19, 20 years old, and went to film school there. You know, I just was really interested in telling stories, and growing up in a small town, I don't know what it's like here, but there weren't a lot of artists where I grew up. No one really made a living in the arts, so it just didn't seem practical to do comics, or, you know, I didn't know anyone who did comics at all. I loved them, but...
And you drew them yourself when you were a kid, right?
Yeah, I've always drawn comics and stuff, but it never seemed like something I could pursue as a viable living or a career, you know. But there was like a very strong film industry in Toronto, where I thought, well, maybe I could take my love of storytelling and somehow work it into working in that industry or something. It was kind of naive, because you get there and then you realize a film degree doesn't get you anywhere, and you're just like a PA on set, and you know, you're not telling stories anyway. You're just basically working a day job that's unfulfilling. And also,
and the situation is a bit like what you described at DC.
Yeah, I mean, making a film, there's so many people involved to get a film made. You know, even if you're the director, you still have to work with a cinematographer, actors. You need a lot of money, especially back then, because we didn't have digital yet. So it was, you know, all on film, super expensive. So trying to get your vision on the screen was so difficult, and I'm a fairly shy, introverted person to begin with, so I don't really have the personality to like, you know, work with all these different people and keep my vision and whatnot. But I when I was there in Toronto, there was a lot of really great comic book shops in the city, so I kind of got exposed to comics again. I grew up loving comics and reading them, and then when in my late teens, you know, superhero comics then this was like mid-90s, they were at their rock bottom in terms of artistic
not a good
quality.
time.
It was just horrible stuff, you know. But Vertigo stuff was really good, so I kept doing that. And then I went to the city, and I kind of discovered all kinds of stuff there, you know, European comics and underground comics, and reignited my love of drawing, you know. So I by my it was a 4-year film program. By halfway through my third year, I stopped going to all my classes, and I just stayed home and drew all day. So I kind of knew that
you dropped out.
Well, for the most part, I saw it through. My last year, I actually made a film, but I didn't go to any of my other classes. I just made my film and then got out, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, I knew by then that comics was where I really wanted to go, you know, because like we said, I could sit on a desk and write and draw a story, and that would be exactly what the reader got. There's no filter, you know. It's the most direct storytelling form I could think of. and I love that. So, and I love drawing. I just missed drawing so much.
Yeah, that's what we all love, I think, about comics. That it's
It's
very
like one person's vision. You can't get that. And even prose, like literature, is still type on a page. You know, you're not seeing the person's drawings or like their handwriting. It's so personal, and it's the only medium like that. I just love it.
Yeah, and it's very direct form of communication between the creator and the reader.
Yeah, I mean, if me and Scott were trying to make 80 as a film, can you imagine how expensive it would be and how many people would have to be involved and actors and, whereas two people can alone just get their vision and put it right out,
Terry Gilliam described movie making once as trying to do a painting with a 90-foot brush and you have a whole crew of people holding the brush, and then you're standing there screaming, "No, a little more green on the left, a little more green on the left."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, but then your first book that you self-published was Lost Dogs, right?
Yeah, there were a couple mini comics I did before that no one has seen, thankfully.
But
they were really bad.
I'll look for them in Toronto.
You'll never.
Good, but
there are only like 100 copies, and
okay.
I think I still have about 98 of them. I spent, just like graduated film school, didn't graduate. I ended my time at film school in 2000. I was 24, I think, and I decided comics was it. So I just started really focused working on comics. I tried to get a day job that had nothing to do with the arts or with my creative brain, so that I didn't waste any of that energy on anything else. So I just worked as a cook in Toronto. And I would work at night cooking in restaurants, and then I would wake up early and just draw all day. And I did that for 4 or 5 years before I published anything, just learning the craft and experimenting and trying different things and just trying to find what kind of stories I want to tell. Trying to find my voice really as a writer and artist. And that's where all those mini comics were that period. So
okay.
But then
food-scented mini comics.
Yeah. So then in 2005, I did a book called Lost Dogs, a graphic novel, which was sort of the first thing I did that was sort of long form, it wasn't just a short story. And it was the first thing that kind of started to feel like me, if that makes sense. It's still, when I look at it now, it's very raw and rough, but I can see the beginnings of my style in it for sure. And so it's the first thing I kind of felt like maybe this was good enough to put out there. And I applied for a few grants in Canada, actually wasn't in Canada, I got a Zurich grant from, I don't know if the Zurich, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was Peter Laird, one of the creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
He started this grant where every year he gave out 2 $5,000 self-publishing grants to up-and-coming people, and I won one of those and put out Lost Dogs, and then from there I started right on Essex County, and it just kind of kept snowballing after that.
Yeah.
That was like 2005.
Yeah, and Essex County is your longest work to date, right?
I think Sweet Tooth, if you add it all together, might.
Yeah.
I can't. It's pretty close, yeah, but they're both. Sweet Tooth definitely took longer.
Yeah, have you read Essex County? Yeah.
Yeah. Only one person.
Wow. They're just shy. But if those of you who haven't, what a great gift you have to unwrap. I can say. I've been immersing myself in your world in preparation for this, of course. So that's tell us a bit about it. It's better.
Yeah, I mean, Lost Dogs. Like I said, I could see the beginning of something there, but still, Essex County was literally me going back to where I came from, the small farming community where I grew up, and it wasn't autobiography, but it was, the place was definitely the place where I grew up, and the people I grew up around were inspired the story for sure. I started working on that book in 2006, the first volume of that. It ended up being 3 graphic novels that are now collected into one story, but I didn't have a publisher, all this stuff, I didn't really think I would ever make a living doing comics even then, I just thought I would do them, try to get them out as best I could, and I'd have to always work day jobs, you know, as a cook or whatever. And I was kind of, at the time, I was happy with that, relatively happy, you know. Making a career, making money was never the goal. I was always telling the stories. And so I just did it. I did the first volume on my own and sent it to, I think, 3 publishers in the States, Top Shelf, Drawing Quarterly, and Fantagraphics, and an Image, actually. An Image and Top Shelf both wanted to publish it, so that, you know, that was a huge moment for me, because up until then I'd mostly been working by myself, and no one had really seen my work, you know, even Lost Lives wasn't widely seen. And when a real publisher, you know, accepts a piece of work, it's a validation, okay, maybe I am good enough, maybe I haven't been wasting my time for the last 10 years. So that was very exciting. They published the first volume, and then we did it as a trilogy of 3 books, and each one kind of grew in popularity. And it was real, you know, for an indie book in the States, it really kind of it was a breakthrough. It really did really well and got the attention of some of the editors at DC Comics. Bob Schreck was an editor at the time at Vertigo, and he asked me, he loved Essex County, and asked me to pitch something for Vertigo, and that's how Sweet Tooth came. And Sweet Tooth led to me being asked to write some superhero stuff for DC proper, and you know, it's kind of
snowballed from there.
Yeah, it just keeps.
Yeah, but staying a bit with the Essex County, you were part of like this reading project, Canada Reads, for a while.
Yeah, that was actually later,
yeah,
after it was done. Yeah, so when the book was, they were all done. I was already working on Sweet Tooth at the time, and there's this thing called Canada Reads, which is how to explain it.
We have basically the same thing here with like Stockholm Reads, where you pick a local novel, okay, and there's a poll with everyone can vote.
Yeah, this is run by the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Every year they pick 5 books, and it becomes this big like month-long campaign where they pick one Canadian celebrity who will kind of endorse one of the books and champion it on air and stuff, and they have like this big competition. And Essex County became the. Do you guys know the pop band Tegan and Sarah? You ever heard of them? Sarah Quinn chose Essex County, so she. Thank you, Sarah.
Congratulations.
So she championed that, and it was the first graphic novel ever. It had been around for like 10 years at this point, 15 years, but there'd never been a graphic novel on it before. And it was the first one, so that was kind of opened up a whole new readership for me in Canada, where, you know, more literary audience and stuff. And the book was the first one voted off the competition. I think all the other books saw it as an easy target. They all ganged up on it to save themselves the first day. But there was an online component as well, where people could vote online, like a audience award or whatever. And after it got voted off, there was like a huge backlash, and it became like the most popular
of all the books.
Yeah, it won like hands down the competition, and I ended up selling about 10 times more than any of the other books.
Wow,
that's good.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful story and very harsh. I mean, some of those pages I can't even think about them without the floodgates open. It's so you know how to turn the knife, so to speak.
Yeah, it's none of it's autobiography, but it's still deeply personal work for sure. Yeah. I think I've always been attracted to stories that aren't frivolous or light or funny. They're everyone says my work's depressing, but I just like things that make someone feel something. That's the kind of stories I react to, and I want people to feel something when they read my work too. So it tends to be the kind of stories I gravitate towards.
Yes. Yeah. So pick it up if you haven't. I think there might be a few copies to buy at the market, or otherwise you can borrow it at Seriefestivalen. Yeah, so moving from Essex County, which is all you, to your Marvel and Valiant work, for instance, you see kind of a thematic coherence, because when you did like Bloodshot Reborn, you're pretty much in the same mind space, you might say, as Essex County, tonality-wise, even though it's Bloodshot is the sort of the Wolverine of valiant, you might say, indestructible soldier.
Yeah.
But here he's in a very bad place.
Yeah, I mean, I always struggle with this because, you know, some people are fans of my work from Essex County, and then they'll see that I do superhero stuff, and they kind of turn their nose up at it, or, you know, they're snobbish about it, and that's, you know, not real work. This is your personal work, and that's...
Yeah, I don't understand that reaction.
I can't separate things like that, you know. I actually, I don't know if any of you watched the film last night with Jeffrey Jones, but there was a Mobius moment in there where he was talking about commercial work.
Yeah.
He said something like, it really struck me, where he says, you know, when you get commercial illustration work, you can either turn your nose up at it and just do it and get it done, or you can throw your heart into it and make it something beautiful. And for me, I mean, I don't know any other way to tell a story. I haven't put everything I got into it. So whether it's Essex County and stuff I'm drawing myself, or it's Moon Knight or Bloodshot or Green Arrow, I put just as much of myself into that. And I think, like you said, a lot of similar themes pop up in both works. There's enough connective tissue between the two that I've been able to cultivate a readership that likes to read both, for the most part, likes to read both of my kind of sides of my work, which is nice. You know, often there's not a crossover there. So.
Yes. So more about process. When you write scripts for others, what's the whole deal? Do you deliver full script?
I do, yeah. I mean, I've discovered. I worked at DC for about 4 or 5 years, and now about a year at Marvel. So 5 or 6 years of doing this. I discovered half the battle, or more than half the battle, doing a good superhero comic is just getting a good artist, because there's even more so than my own graphic novels and stuff, superhero comics are so dependent on strong visuals and a unique visual voice, you know, so I try to really be very careful about who I work with. That's the first thing. So, you know, for instance, on Green Arrow, Andrea Sorrentino and I developed a really great chemistry, and we're doing it again on Old Man Logan, but so when I find an artist like that, who I trust, whose work I love, and who I know we work well together, I've discovered the best thing for me to do is stay away. Just give them as little direction as possible, and let them handle all the visual aspects, and let them be themselves, and not try to restrict them or direct them too much. You know?
Okay.
So my scripts are full scripts, but with the understanding that as long as they're communicating the same information, they can do it any way they want to do it. You know, I'll adapt later. So.
Okay, so no, you don't deliver thumbnails or anything.
I did that my very first, my first 2 books at DC. I had never written for another artist. I'd always only drawn my own comics, so it was a real learning experience. And I did thumbnails and layouts and stuff, and the results weren't as good, you know. And I realized, because I was restricting those artists and trying to make them, instead of them being themselves and bringing everything they can to it, they got distracted by trying to give me what I wanted, and so I stopped doing thumbnails and that. I just sort of laid off the visual stuff and just focused on character and theme and pacing, and let them handle all the layout and stuff. And I found the results for the most part much better, especially if it's someone whose work you like to begin with. You're ahead of the game.
Yes. Yeah. So working at DC, you stepped away from that you had an exclusive contract there for a while. Yeah,
I was exclusive with them for 4 years, I think. My last year there was not pleasant. I don't know. I don't want to air too much dirty laundry, but it just became
just a little bit.
The environment there sort of started to change, and the projects I was working on, I wasn't happy with the direction of them, and I wasn't happy with the way they were being handled editorially, and I felt like time for a change, for sure. Yeah. I moved away and started working with Image and Dark Horse and Valiant and Marvel. And it's been great.
Yeah. So moving to Marvel, how did that happen?
I've been having conversations with Axel Alonso, who's the editor-in-chief at Marvel, for a few years. You know, I think when Animal Man hit, he took notice of me as well, and kind of would always pull me off to the side. When you're ready to do DC, give me a call. And we kind of kept that line of communication open, which is, a smart thing to do, freelancer. So when I knew things were not going great at DC and I wanted to change, we started talking again, and he offered me Hawkeye, which was really scary because I don't. You guys read Matt Fraction's Hawkeye? Anybody?
Yeah.
It was so good, you know.
Yeah, Matt Fraction.
He wanted me to follow that up,
Yeah.
and I was. Please no, you know, like of all the things you can offer me, just give me something that was.
It's like going on and playing funk after Prince.
Yeah, when we did Green Arrow at DC, the people who did Green Arrow before us, no offense, but it was horrible, you know. So it's like you come on that book, and it's like anything you do, you're like,
yeah, it's gonna be a step up.
You're a star, you know.
Yeah.
But this was like the opposite, where it was such a beloved take on that character. So I said no to Hawkeye, and he kept
For a
pressing
while.
me. Finally, I got an idea for a story, and I said okay. So we did it, and yeah, I'm pretty proud of my Hawkeye. I think it was good. You know, it was a little different from Matt's, but I think it still felt like a continuation of his characters, but still it felt more like me, you know. So I did that, and that went well, and now I'm exclusive with Marvel. You know, they started offering me some really great stuff like the X-Men and Moon Knight and things like that. They're a lot of fun. So
yeah, pick up Moon Knight if you haven't. It's
I think
great first issue with
Moon
Smallwood and Belair on art.
Gonna be a good book. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really proud of that one.
Yeah, and picking projects. You have of course read superhero comics all your life. So do you have like a bucket list of characters or?
Not really. I didn't read any Marvel stuff, so
No.
I always read DC comics. So the Marvel stuff, I don't really have any connection to those characters, which is kind of a benefit. You know, I found at DC I loved so many of those characters so much that I got the chance to write a couple of those bucket list characters like John Constantine or Swamp Thing or something, who I grew up and I just loved those characters. And I was so in love with what had come before me, and I couldn't make it my own enough. You know, I was too beholden to the stuff I loved.
Yeah,
Whereas
that can be dangerous.
Green Arrow, I never read a Green Arrow comic before, so I was just went and made it my own and just kind of tore it apart and did my own thing, you know, and that works better.
Yeah.
So the Marvel stuff's been good because I don't have really any sentimental attachment to any of those characters.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, no bucket list. Although I do love the Punisher. He's maybe the one.
Yeah.
I kind of did my Punisher story with Bloodshot, so I feel like, you know.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, you saw my belt buckle yesterday, of course. So.
No, I didn't see
No,
it.
but it's the logo.
There.
Oh yeah, but Becky Cloonan is doing Punisher now,
Becky, yeah,
and you read the first issue.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do feel like the environment at Marvel is much more open, much more creative, you know, or better variety of artists. First of all, they don't have like a house style, you know, like they'll find the right artist for the project, and very diverse visual styles going on, which I enjoy. And also it's a little more trying to be politically. Yeah, I'll better just stop that. It's much more open for us to do what we want to do with those characters and to make it our own and to put our voice into stuff. And yeah, it's set up much better.
Yeah, but how do you feel about the constant starting and stopping now?
I hate it. Yeah, I mean, I hate it as much as the fans do, but what can I do? You know, it's not my decision.
No.
You know, I just try to tell the best stories I can, and sales and marketing and people like that, they worry about that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I do feel it's a bit manipulative, you know, like every year rebooting everything to get people to buy it again and again. You know, it's cheap.
Yeah, cheap kids. Yeah, but what's your ideal when you get scripts from other writers apart from being faster than Scott Snyder?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the only time I've ever really worked with a writer.
Okay.
I've only ever drawn stuff that I've written myself, so it's for a couple short stories here and there. But for like a big project, this is the first time. It's interesting. I mean, Sky and I are best friends, so we kind of break down the professional relationship isn't really there. It's just a very personal relationship, and so it's interesting. It's tough. But he really gives me a lot of freedom. Like his scripts aren't full scripts for me. It's just this happens. They say this stuff. And I do all the layout, and the pacing, all the visual stuff. It's almost like I'm drawing. You know, I'm writing it myself. It feels that way. So it's a very free and open relationship that we have. But I don't think I would I'm not eager to work with other writers all that much after this. You know, I wanted to do it with Scott because I really respect him, and we really wanted to at least create one book that was a combination of both of our aesthetics. But from now on, I'll probably just go back to drawing my own stuff. You know, I have a lot of stories I want to do. So.
Yeah, do we have any questions from the audience at this point? Or yeah?
I was wondering, when you did Essex County, did you write everything from start to finish and then draw it, or how is that process?
I didn't know what I was doing. Honestly,
just repeat the question. Did you Essex County? Did you do it from start to finish, or?
Yeah, I didn't write like a full script or anything. I had the basic idea for the first volume of that story, just the general idea of it, and I would just sit down and figure out what's the next scene, and I'd kind of like maybe write a little bit of dialogue on a piece of paper, and it was all very spontaneous and kind of finding my way. And I didn't really have I didn't know the whole story. I didn't know how everything connected yet. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just kind of each day figured out a little bit more. And since I've been working at, you know, DC and stuff, I'm so used to structure now, where everything is outlined and then tight scripts and everything, which is good, but I want to kind of go back to that way a little bit, you know. So for my newer projects like Roughneck and the one I'm working on now, I'm kind of going back to that, where I know the big things that are going to happen, but all the little details and everything, I wait until the day I'm working on those pages to figure that stuff out, because I feel like the less you know, the more excited you stay. You know, if you know everything that's going to happen, every panel, a year ahead of time, it's hard to stay excited about it, you know, before you draw it. So it's good to keep yourself engaged that way, I think, by a looser script.
Yeah, how often do your characters surprise you with what they do when they're on the page?
I always, you know, even I feel, even if you do a tight outline for something, when you start writing a script or you start drawing a page with dialogue and stuff, the characters just sort of come alive in your head, and it's almost like I'm not writing them anymore, I'm just writing down what they're saying, you know, so it's always a surprise, and that's the exciting part, and that's why I try to hold on to that moment, you know, where you get excited about something new, and
yeah, that's one of the amazing parts of Essex County, and of course your other work. There's a large span of characters, like you have old guys and little kids and everything in between.
If it was up to me, I'd only ever write really old men and
Yeah.
really little boys, and nothing else. That's like my favorite thing to write.
Yeah. But my point was that they all work out to me. I mean, the voices sound real.
Yeah,
So-
I've always had a knack for writing kids. I love
Yeah.
writing kids. You know, Descender, Sweet Tooth, Essex County. I love that, and I think I'm inside a really like a 90-year-old grumpy man. So
Yeah. You can find your inner
that's
grumpy
easy
guy.
to find.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Yes. Any more questions? Yes. Up there.
Do you have any advice on how to self-edit properly? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
How to self-edit properly.
self-edit. Yeah, I try to. Sometimes I think back and I try to figure out. You know, so many people want to make comics like I did 10 years ago, 15 years ago when I started, and so few make it to where I am, you know, and sometimes I think back, what was it that I had that I made it, and I think it's that I was a really, I was so hard on myself, but not to the point where I crippled myself. I'm trying to explain this. I could always see the flaws in my work, and every day I would, you know, look at the weaknesses in my work, and I'd work on those things every day and try to get them better. But I never let it get so bad. Like, I never looked at my stuff and felt so terrible about it that it made me stop. But just enough, it made you keep working, and made you keep working on your weaknesses and getting better. So you kind of have to sit back and take a really honest look at your work and try to find one or two things that you do really well, and try to find one or two things that you do very poorly. And then each day you try to work on those things that you do poorly, and if you can figure out those things you do poorly and make them a strength, it elevates all of your work. So even when I finish a graphic novel, I'll go through it and I'll look for I'll spend a day, I'll look for the 10 worst drawings in the book, and I'll make those the 10 best drawings. I'll redo them, and then it elevates the whole work. You know, just you just have to be very honest with yourself and know that the first time you do something is not necessarily the greatest thing in the world, and you don't have it all figured out. Just be very critical of always looking for your weaknesses.
Yeah, Jim Thirlwell, one of my favorite artists of all time, he said that you have to be your own biggest fan and critic all at the same time.
You have to know what you do well and embrace it and use it to your advantage as much as you can. I'm not the greatest artist in the world. My art can be pretty raw, and my anatomy can be a little off sometimes, and but I do know I can create a mood really well, and I can tell a story panel to panel very well. So I embrace those things, and then I'm constantly working on my anatomy and my the technical stuff is something I'm always working on, knowing that I have a strong base in storytelling. So yes, you have to know what you do well, what you do poorly, and kind of maximize the good and minimize the bad, and then slowly work on the bad, and get better at it.
Yeah, but just a sideline with the different form of collaboration. When you did Bloodshot Reborn now with Mikko Soyan at first, and then Butch Guys, in the first volume, Colorado, you draw Blood Squirt. The little kid.
That's people who haven't read that book are really wondering what you're talking
about. yeah.
So Bloodshot, I'll explain it really quickly.
Yeah.
Bloodshot's kind of like the Punisher. He's like this big tough guy soldier character.
Mm-hmm.
And in my first storyline, he has like a total mental breakdown, and you start seeing like a little cartoon version of himself called Blood Squirt. He's like this kind of maniac cartoon character. And I drew that little.
Kill a little.
Yeah, I drew that little cartoon guy on top of Mikko, the artist. He has like this hyper realistic photographic style, like the opposite of how I draw.
Yeah.
So I drew this little super cartoony, crazy character on top of it. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, but what were the reactions? Because
people love that character.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They love him. I have to bring him back now because people love him so much.
Okay.
It started as a joke though, Blood Squirt. I was at dinner with Warren Simons, the editor of Valiant, and we were talking Bloodshot. I don't know where I got this idea of Blood Squirt with like squirt guns.
Yeah.
And it started as a joke, and then I said, I'm really gonna put that in the story. And he's like, yeah. And then he read my first script. And he was like, but it worked out.
Yeah. You picked that up as well. Yes. More questions from the audience. We'll start.
Yeah. It's probably a very basic question, but you mentioned DC in your early years, but what do you draw your inspiration from besides comics?
Yeah, you know what? This is going to sound really bad, but I don't read a lot of comics anymore, and that's not because I don't love them. It's just that...
Man, I'm shocked now.
Well, I wake up at 6 in the morning and go to my studio for 7, and I work for 9 hours straight drawing comics every day, and I go home, spend some time with my family, and my son goes to bed, and then I write comics for 2 or 3 hours every night. When I sit down to relax and read, the last thing I want to think about is comics. I just shut my brain off, So I read other things right now. I'm just reading a lot of literature and prose and stuff, and a lot of films. I still, as much as film wasn't for me creatively, I still draw tons of inspiration from filmmakers and movies. And so yeah, I think if you're just being inspired by comics and then writing comics, you end up making comics about comics, and it becomes
you can turn to Jeff Jones.
Yeah, such a narrow, no comment, such a narrow point of view. You got to draw from everything, there's amazing stuff. I was walking around just looking at the architecture in Old Town today, and that was inspiring me. I wanted to draw that, you got to draw for every aspect of your life has to go into your work, your family, everything. And if you're just looking at comics and then making comics, what do you have to say that, that anyone's beyond nerds who just read comics are going to be interested in? No offense.
Yeah, but favorite directors then?
David Lynch is my hero.
No big surprise there.
Yeah, he's been a constant source of inspiration for me my whole life, and just huge inspiration in every aspect. I got into this thing. I got into meditation 2 years ago because of David Lynch was such a proponent of meditation, and I kind of got interested, and it's completely changed my life, creatively, and so much more productive and stuff.
Yeah, Scott Ellis into that now as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No comment. Yeah, David Lynch is my favorite artist. period, great storyteller. Kubrick, incredible. All kinds of stuff. You know, I could start listing people. Yeah, I love movies. So.
Okay, thanks. Well, the other question over there. Yeah.
Going back to your mainstream work, you mentioned currently you're writing Moon Knight and Old Man Logan and before Hawkeye, and currently you also write the X-Men for Marvel.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, what would you say is the difference between writing a solo group book, a solo characters,
So
and
much
team book?
easier.
Because I can see the difference. Because I'm actually a reader of most of your Marvel work.
Yeah, team books are really hard. You know,
Yeah, the question was solo. Yeah, solo characters versus
I
team books.
much prefer writing solo characters. You can focus in on one character, obviously, and create a point of view and a vision for that character, and just really dig deep into it. Whereas team book, obviously, you're servicing a whole bunch of characters, trying to give them each a storyline. You only have so much space to do it, so inevitably you can't get as deep in any one of them as you can in a solo book. Plus, I find they become much more plot-driven. The team books, just by nature, you need to give them big, huge threats to have 5 superheroes fighting every month to make it, you know, it's tough to do well. I'm still figuring it out, to be honest. You know, I don't like doing it. I prefer doing solo stuff, but I challenge myself to get better at the other things, so I'm always trying. That's why I took the X-Men, or take one team book every once in a while and try to just do better than I did last time, and hopefully eventually I'll figure it out. But I don't think I still. There are moments, and there's always moments in the X-Men stuff where I think, oh, that's a good scene or a good issue, but I still haven't quite figured out the team book thing. It's tough. Some people are really good at it, but it's not my strength for sure. You can't shy away from it either, because then you just will never do team books, you'll never grow. So I gotta force myself to try to get better and do it.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a question over here, I think.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
Hi. Any particular creator, writer, artist, or company, maybe even that you would want to be published in the future?
Right now I'm working with a lot of publishers. I kind of, you know, I'm Dark Horse, Image, Marvel, Valiant, Top Shelf. So I feel like I've got that covered.
All over the place.
Are you talking about people I'd like to collaborate with? Is that?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, there's so many artists. There's so many incredible cartoonists and artists that I could just start listing a grocery list of amazing people. But yeah, I don't know.
Any particular artist style that you're looking forward to? Inspiration, maybe that you read?
Oh, for inspiration when I'm drawing myself?
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe?
Geez, who am I into right now? I found a couple cartoonists here. Who was the guy's name that I pointed at dinner last night? Eric?
Yeah, Erik Svetoft.
That guy's amazing.
Yeah.
That made me want to
Check
go
him
home
out.
and draw.
He's got stuff from Sanatorium förlag
Amazing stuff.
in studio.
Yeah, I mean, I try to. Who am I into right now? It changes every week. Jaime Hernandez is my big, and I don't draw anything like him, but yet there's stuff in him. He's so good at body language, and it's sort of this natural. His people look so real, you know, the way they emote and the way they interact. It's like they're real people, you know.
Yes.
And so there's so much for me to learn from him right now. And again, that doesn't mean I have to draw like him, because we don't draw anything alike. But I can learn. I can see what he does well and try to filter it through the way I draw and get better at that kind of stuff. So this last year, I've been kind of obsessed with his stuff.
Okay. Yes. Another question.
When you start to write like a known character, do they send you like some sort of Bible for the
I
character?
would think they would.
Yeah, it's like, let's say Moon Knight. The only thing
No, I have to go to New York Comic
Comic
Con and find every Moon Knight copy myself. I'm serious. Which is kind of fun, but yeah, no, they don't really send you that. You're kind of expected to either know what's come before you or figure it out. So yeah, there's a lot of buying up back issues and reading stuff. Luckily, sometimes you have to read stuff that's so bad. It's like you just like reading that Green Arrow stuff. I just want to kill myself about 3 issues into that. Moon Knight stuff was cool. Like the '70s Moon Knight stuff was so fun to read again. The Bill Sienkiewicz stuff. And
Yeah, that's
sometimes
amazing.
and the X-Men stuff. There's so many cool, great X-Men stories from the '80s and stuff. Rereading that's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be really inspiring. I drew tons of inspiration from the '70s Moon Knight stuff. and I found ways to actually use it as part of the story. You know, Moon Knight, I don't know who's read it, but the first issue, Moon Knight, the character is he's in an insane asylum, and the conceit is that everything we've read Moon Knight in the past has all been in his head, and he's just like this guy in a mental institution, and he has these journals, and the journals, I drew the journals in like my own style, and it's all just dialogue taken right from the 70s comics, you know, so, you know, sometimes you find little things like that that inspire a storytelling. It's fun reading that stuff. Yeah, I love comics, so when your homework is reading comics, it's like pretty good. Can't complain.
No, definitely not. Yeah, so anyone else? Yeah, we have a question up there.
Yes, so your work at Bloodshot Reborn has been, quite frankly, really amazing.
Thanks.
And so what I was thinking was, can you tell something a little bit what's going to happen in Bloodshot Island?
Yeah, what's gonna happen in Bloodshot Island?
So Bloodshot Island is, Nico comes back, the guy who did the first arc, he's amazing. And it's all the Bloodshots, some of this has been hinted at in previous runs, but I kind of solidified it where there have been many Bloodshots throughout every kind of era of, every war has had their own Bloodshot. So we have a Cold War Bloodshot, Vietnam Bloodshot, World War II Bloodshot, or whatever. And they're all on this mysterious island together with our Bloodshot, trying to get off. I'm not gonna say anything else, but there's a dog called Bloodhound. That was my Blood Squirt is also on the island, and that's gonna lead to something really big called the Bloodshot War, which is coming in. I don't know if we've announced that. It's coming after. It's gonna be a big event. Yeah, and that's gonna be sort of the culmination of everything from issue 1 through issue 20 all together into one big story.
Yeah, so as you can hear, you gotta pick up Bloodshot Reborn if you haven't already. So yes, anyone else? Yeah.
Two more questions. Hi. Will you ever make comics for children?
For what?
For children, kids.
Yeah. I'm doing a book now called Descender with Image Comics. It's about this little boy, this robot, and his pet robot and stuff. It's not for kids, but the kid in the Tim 21, the robot in the story, reads a kid's book called Trinket Tocket and has Tim Rocket. It's like this manga-inspired kids thing, and Dustin and I are actually going to make that children's book and publish it in next year, I think. So that'll be my first kids book. I mean, I have a 7-year-old son, so it would be nice to have something of mine he could actually look at and not be traumatized.
Has he been asking about reading your comics?
What's that?
Has he been asking about reading?
He likes to, we go for walks and he likes to try to think up new villains for Wolverine to fight. The most insane things, and sometimes they're actually really cool. So one of them will be in Wolverine. But yeah, he's not really, I try to keep him away from comics as much as I can, just because inevitably he's going to be surrounded by it his whole life by being my son, so I'm just trying not to force it on him. If he naturally is attracted to it and wants to read comics when he gets a bit older, that's great, but I don't want to force him into something. Yeah.
Is there an update on Black Hammer?
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, Black Hammer was a book, actually, when I finished Essex County, the top shelf, I came up with this idea for Black Hammer, which was sort of, I mean, at the time I hadn't written any superhero comics professionally, but I loved them. I grew up reading them. So this was kind of me taking all those superhero comics I loved as a kid and sort of telling like an Essex County kind of story with it, where it was this group of oddball superheroes living on a small town on a farm together. And I pitched this idea to Dark Horse back in 2007, I think, and they loved it. It was right after Essex County, and they were going to do it. But then I also pitched Sweet Tooth at the same time, and that got accepted. So I kind of had to make a decision, and I went with Sweet Tooth and did that. Black Hammer kind of got put to the side. It was one of those ideas that every once in a while, in my sketchbook, I'd draw on the characters again. I kind of always never really went away, you know. So maybe about a year and a half ago when I left DC, I was kind of looking to do more creator-owned stuff. And I kind of resurrected Black Hammer and polished it off and kind of gave it a new coat of paint and stuff. But I knew with me drawing everything I was drawing, I couldn't draw it myself. So I found an artist, Dean Ormston, who's a British artist whose work I really loved at Vertigo, and I thought we had a sort of a similar aesthetic, you know, and we got along really well. So I approached him to draw it. And unfortunately, Dean had a stroke a year ago, and he had drawn the first issue, and it was amazing. And I really do think it's maybe the best thing I've ever written. And I was so excited about it. And then Dean had all these health issues, and the comic was secondary to his well-being, of course. But it was really in limbo. But then he's recovered fully, and he's back to working his regular schedule. So the book's going to come out in July. He's done 5 issues now, so we're doing well. He's doing great. I think it looks terrific, and I'm super proud of it. I think it perfectly combines my personal stuff like Essex County and Sweet Tooth and my superhero stuff, and it's something that I'm really proud of. I really love the characters. So, yeah, that's coming from Dark Horse in July.
Yeah, so another buying tip. Yeah, we have time for a very quick question.
Okay, I'll try to make it quick. This is also about the process. So when you're writing your scripts, you said that they're pretty open and you're trying to find out what's going to happen as you work. How do you know what you're writing about in the end? Like, how do you figure out where it's going?
Well, when I said that, I meant when I draw my own stuff, I keep it very open. When I'm writing scripts for
I'm talking about your own stuff.
My own
Essex
stuff.
County.
Yeah.
Like,
how do I know? I don't know what it's about.
Okay.
Honestly, I never know what anything's about until it's done, and then people tell me. I don't know. I didn't know what that was about. I just started. You just follow something that feels right, and you keep doing it, and then you start to see connections after you get a little bit of it done, and say, oh, maybe I like that. We'll do more of that, and it kind of becomes a thing. But I'm never a guy who sits down and like, I want to tell a story about this, and then it starts. I never know what any of my stuff's about until it's done. I don't work that way. Yeah.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we have time for here.
We're
But
gonna do a podcast, right?
Yeah. We I try to keep this as open as possible for those who haven't read all of Jeff's work yet. But I also do a podcast called Hög av serier. So after this, me and Jeff are gonna talk some more with my colleague Anton Bjurwald, and then we'll go into all the nitty-gritty with.
I think I'm doing a signing at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, 4 o'clock. There's a signing upstairs in Hörsalen. So you can listen to the podcast interview later this week. So a lot of more detail about all the superhero stuff that we touch upon here. So thank you so much, Jeff, for your time, and thank you for coming here.